Thank you for joining us. Health is a subject of importance to everyone, and with us today are two leaders in the pursuit of health and longevity. Dr. Jose Cordeiro, who is involved with many initiatives, including being the founder of the World Future Society, and Bill Faloon, the co-founder of Life Extension. They'll share their views on exciting breakthroughs in health research right after these messages.
Life Extension Foundation was established in 1977 and is now the world's largest consumer-based anti-aging organization. Life-saving achievements taken for granted today were pioneered by Life Extension Foundation decades ago. Life Extension is currently funding $10 million a year in research on significantly extending a healthy human lifespan. Diseases that once plagued humanity have largely been eradicated by scientific innovation. 3 leading causes of death in 1900 are no longer leading killers today. Smallpox killed millions before it was eliminated in 1979. Life Extension funds research to fight biological aging so that it also will become a relic of the past. To learn more, log on to lifeextensionfoundation.org.
With us now is Dr. Jose Cordeiro and Bill Faloon. A real pleasure and privilege, sir. Bill, always a pleasure.
Thank you, Richard.
I listened to your lecture. It was really fascinating. And I was thinking about evolution. You mentioned that and how humanity may be an evolutionary mistake. Some people say halfway from the ancestral ape to what must come next. Please elaborate.
Well, we got to this point through random evolution in a way, but now we can control it, we can direct it better, we can look for certain things and avoid other things. So I call this conscious evolution, technological evolution into the future, so that we live longer, happier, better, more intelligent, more fulfilling lives.
So interesting. And you were speaking about transhumanism in general and technology and nanotechnology. Please elaborate a little more on that.
Yeah, well, transhumanism is a philosophy similar to Nikolai Fedorov in the late 19th century that he called cosmism in Russia. Transhumanism is in a way similar how the power of technology can improve humanity and how we can transcend the current human limitations. We have many limitations. Actually, our organs, our eyes, our noses, our ears are very bad even compared to other animals. In the animal kingdom, they have better capabilities than we humans in many things. And for example, thinking about the Cyborg Olympic Games that began last year in Zurich, Switzerland, the Cybathlon, the Cyborg Olympic Games, we had people who were disabled, who had no legs, no arms, soon people who are blind that will be enhanced with technology, and they will go from being disabled to being super abled. This is part of the idea of transhumanism, transcending human limitations to live better, healthier, longer lives.
Well, speaking of progress and those that inhibit progress, Bill, you wrote this book, Pharmocracy, and I believe you're writing a rewrite of it, which seems to be what occurs in today's world.
Pharmocracy 2 will come out. The purpose of the book is to expose the corruption that exists within the federal government that slows down or stops altogether biomedical progress. People are dying today needlessly because of the obstacles erected by the Food and Drug Administration against the rapid development of drugs to slow aging, reverse aging, cure disease. We have got to remove the bureaucratic barriers that are impeding technological innovation.
What are your thoughts with regard to that, sir?
Yeah, regulations sometimes stop the advancement of science. Many people are worried about what is called the precautionary principle, but I think we actually have to move forward in what we call the proactionary principle. So it's not so much precaution, but to see the advantages of science and technology. In fact, humanity has advanced so much in the last few decades thanks to science and technology. And for that matter, it is also important international competition in several systems, because The USA lost a big opportunity with stem cell research, about 20 years ago, and then other countries began moving much faster, like Singapore, South Korea, Japan. So we live in a global world where we have to compete for better systems, more efficient systems, so that medicine, biotechnology advance for the benefit of humanity.
How do you see the cooperation between different research institutes in this direction?
Well, there is cooperation, but not enough. There's too much commercialization. And the purpose of the Life Extension Foundation as a nonprofit entity is to bring together different minds, different technologies, so that we can share information and accelerate the development of technologies that will eventually eliminate most of the degenerative illnesses that relate to aging. Aging was long ago and has always been considered inevitable. Technology now indicates we can slow it. That's an absolute fact. We can slow aging. We can also accelerate it. If a person wants to smoke a lot of cigarettes, drink a lot of alcohol, and lay out in the sun, it's going to show. Their skin will age in an accelerated way. But we can go the opposite. We can protect ourselves against aging factors, live longer, and live healthier.
You've been subjected to a lot of, I would say, obstruction in your career. It seems throughout history, innovation, science has always been accompanied by skepticism, those who belittle it and question it. Share with our audience some of the experiences you've had with regard to medications that you've advocated that were ridiculed or rejected and finally later reluctantly recognized.
We introduced the concept of low-dose aspirin to reduce the risk of heart attack back in 1983. We spent 15 years battling the Food and Drug Administration. Now, we weren't selling aspirin back then. We were just telling people, take a low dose of it if you're at risk for heart attack or ischemic stroke. And the latest information out is that low-dose aspirin will reduce cancer risk. So we have to constantly battle the Food and Drug Administration to just get our information out the door, to let people know they can extend their lifespan with existing technologies. You look at the anti-diabetic drug metformin. In England, it was used back in 1958. Did not start being used in the United States until 1995. About a 37-year delay because we had a Food and Drug Administration standing in the way of that technology advancing faster.
Incredible. Doctor, you have been involved and are involved with so very many different initiatives. Please tell our audience some of the things you've been doing.
Well, I work mostly as an academic in certain institutions in Russia, in Japan, Korea, Spain, here in the USA, looking at technologies and how technologies change human condition. And obviously, we are interested in improving the human condition. So institutions like Singularity University in Silicon Valley, the Millennium Project internationally, the Moscow Institute of Physics and Technology. I'm really thrilled and excited to see all these new technologies, biotechnology, nanotechnology, that are changing humanity.
Bill, you with your research have been subjected to a lot of skepticism throughout your career, a lot of criticism and, I would say, oppression really. Please share with our audience some of these experiences and the impact it's had on addressing the diseases of aging.
Well, Life Extension Foundation has a track record, basically dates back to 1981 as the first recommendation we made to slow down aging, and that was a hormone called DHEA. It's a very inexpensive hormone, now sold as a dietary supplement anywhere. People can now take it. Back in 1981, it was illegal. In fact, when some of our Life Extension members started to import it from Europe, FDA had them arrested. We had to bond those people out, go to court, and win, just to defend these people's rights to live longer. DHEA has been validated in hundreds of studies to help reverse immune senescence, reduce cardiovascular risk, and probably extend healthy lifespan based on every piece of data we've analyzed.
What's next, sir, in that regard as far as miracle drugs?
I think we've reached a limit when it comes to a pill that someone can take. There's plenty of drugs, nutrients, and hormones out there that can help extend healthy lifespan, but it's now time to reverse aging. And that's going to require some medical intervention. So Life Extension's mission now is to bring the technology into clinical medical practice so that a person who's 88 years of age, suffering many, many comorbidities, is going to be able to grow biologically younger. That is our primary mission at this point in time.
Dr. Cordeiro, what are your thoughts with regard to that?
Yes, we have to try to rejuvenate people, and there are many things that are being experimented, from telomere treatments to regenerative medicine to gene therapy. Gene therapy is also beginning. The use of stem cells for many treatments. New things are being experimented, not only in the USA, but internationally, where there might be less regulations or systems which are more user-friendly, because if a patient wants to try some experiment to do a clinical trial on himself or herself, he or she should be able to do it, because we are really going to be able to cure many of these diseases like we have been done throughout history. I mean, this is nothing new. And we will be able to cure cancer like Microsoft says, and all diseases like Mark Zuckerberg or Google's Calico. We truly are in a turning point in human history.
Bill, please update our audience with regard to breakthroughs at this time.
There are 4 to 6 technologies right now that will probably result in some rejuvenation of older people. We need to clinically validate those. But in proof of concept studies, these involve about 10 to 12 human patients, we've been able to observe reversals of biological aging, both by clinical measurements and anecdotal feedback. Older people feeling and behaving they were before they were treated. We need to move this rapidly into the clinical setting. Every day in the United States, 5,000 Americans die of a degenerative disease, an age-related disease that we now believe is reversible. Many of them are reversible anyway with the existing technologies.
Absolutely fascinating. Tell us more about technology. So you were involved with the research with NASA and other. What are your thoughts with regard to technology, again, from your perspective?
Well, now that we are beginning to find so many exoplanets, planets outside the solar system, this brings new possibilities in terms of different life forms and how we humans will continue evolving, because we did evolve from other lower forms of life in a way. And the possibilities are mind-boggling. We expect maybe in 10 years to begin colonizing Mars. There will be new things we will discover, new threats and opportunities, and I think we have to begin considering those seriously also in terms of space travel. You know, the biology today is not very good for space travel, so what limitations we have, what opportunities we might discover, how we might be able to cure cancer, or how we can attack other diseases. I think it's incredible what we are going to find in 5, 10, 20 years, including reversing aging and rejuvenating people.
Much of what you have been lecturing on has been treated with skepticism in the past. Are you seeing less of that at the present time?
Yes, I think people are understanding that this will be technologically possible, that this is really science, that scientists are beginning to work on this in many countries. I see this happening in Spain, in Japan, in Korea, obviously in many places in the USA. Some research centers are devoted to that. Ray Kurzweil from Singularity University and Google, he talks about that in as soon as 10 years, basically.
Most fascinating. Bill, how do you see the implementation of these projects? What is needed, in your opinion, to accelerate this research?
The easiest way to allow most of the people watching your program today to live a lot longer and a lot healthier would be to abolish the Food and Drug Administration. Get rid of it altogether. It sounds scary to some people, but they are holding back progress more than most people realize. For example, 1985, Life Extension Foundation recommended a drug that everyone has heard of. It's called Tagamet. It's an anti-ulcer medication. It helps dry out some stomach acid for people who have esophageal reflux and ulcers. It has a side benefit though. Side benefit is it has specific anti-cancer actions. Remember, Tagamet, generic name is cimetidine. You can buy it over the counter. But if you are a colon cancer patient and you take cimetidine 5 days before your surgery and 1 year afterwards, you've got about a 50% better chance of surviving over 10 years than if you did not take the cimetidine. I'm talking about a very simple drug sold over the counter that could reduce colon cancer deaths by 50%. So the obstacle, unfortunately, is not so much the technology, it's the bureaucratic barriers erected by our own federal government. We need to tear down those barriers so the technology can move forward much faster.
Why is such critical information not disseminated, other than through Life Extension magazine?
Well, what's interesting is I'm talking about Tagamet, again, generic name, cimetidine. I hope you put it up on your screen, by the way, so people can look this up. Just go to Google or PubMed, which is the National Library of Medicine's database. Type in cimetidine and colon cancer or cimetidine and cancer. You'll see over 125 published studies indicating it is useful in preventing people with cancer from dying prematurely. Now, that information is in the scientific literature, but there's no commercial interest in disseminating it because no one has a patent on cimetidine and cancer. So we've got a great drug sitting there, very few people using it. And unless you read our Life Extension magazine, you're not going to learn about it because the doctors aren't being told about it. There's no pharmaceutical rep running around saying, prescribe cimetidine to your cancer patients. So the doctors don't know about it, the patients don't know about it, and it is illegal for a company that sells cimetidine to promote it as an anti-cancer drug.
So because there's no profit in it, it's just basically suppressed.
It just sits there, idle, while people are dying. About 50,000 people a year die of colon cancer in the United States. Of course, it's metastatic colon cancer that kills them. Cimetidine could cut that by 50%. That's 25,000 Americans dying needlessly every year in this country because the information about cimetidine is censored by the FDA. Eliminate the FDA, that information gets out there, millions of lives will be saved.
Astonishing. Dr. Cordeiro, on a happier note, tell us how you see the future.
Well, I think that we have to create a positive view of the future because many of the things that we believe end up being self-fulfilling prophecies. So if we think we are going to finish with humanity, this is the end of the world, there is overpopulation, climate change will destroy humanity, it will probably happen. But if we think that we can overcome these problems, that we can live longer, that we will colonize the space, we will go to Mars, then it will probably happen.
From a science fiction to science fact. Bill, I'd like to share the final thought with you on this. You've experienced so much in your areas of expertise. You have been researching health and longevity, and today I would say things are far more encouraging than ever. What are your thoughts on that?
I see people living a lot longer and a lot healthier very soon, as long as the information is freely disseminating. The good news is, though, that a number of physician scientists have investigational new drug applications ready to file with the FDA, and what's missing right now is the funding. People don't quite yet grasp the concept that we're on the verge of reversing biological aging in humans, and as a result, not a lot of money is being put into it. But once we establish the first case of an elderly human who becomes a much younger person, I believe it will unleash a firestorm of activity, of money, of academic interest, and all of a sudden it'll grow just as quickly, if not faster, than the internet did.
This is absolutely fascinating and very encouraging. A real pleasure, Bill, as always. Thank you, sir, Dr. Cordeiro.
A pleasure.
I'll be right back. With us now is Charlie Cam. Charlie, a real pleasure and privilege to have you on the show.
Thank you.
And Bill, as always. Charlie, it is exciting to have you on this program. I just attended your lecture. Fascinating, very colorful, beautiful, very articulate. You've been described as a singularitarian. Please explain to our audience what that means.
Well, first of all, I was described by that by myself in one of my songs, which is, I am the very model of a singularitarian. And if you follow the words of the song, it basically tells you it's a combination transhuman, mortalist, extropian. Aggressively, I'm trying to change all my body's biochemistry because my body's heritage is obsolete genetically.
From your perspective, Bill, from Life Extension, what are your views with regard to singularity?
Well, it's the most frightening aspect for the typical person living today. And the reason is, most people watching this program, unless they aggressively intervene into their aging process, they won't be alive when these miracles of technology emerge. And what is being talked about right now is people living very long periods of time in incredible good states of health. And we feel around 2030 to 2045, that's going to happen. But right now, 2017, people 60, 70 years of age, they're going to start contracting degenerative illnesses if they don't aggressively intervene into their own aging process. And the good news is they can do that if they want to be proactive. But if they sit around and wait for illness to manifest, they're going to miss the boat.
Miss the boat, what a concept. What are your thoughts with regard to that, sir?
I agree 100% with what Bill just said. People need to start paying attention to this. I mean, it's basically because it wasn't out there enough in the mainstream media and it wasn't talked about a lot of these things. I lost my father because we weren't knowledgeable enough about cryonics, for example, because cryonics has been around since the 60s, and there's no reason why I shouldn't have had him cryonically preserved, but I just wasn't aware of it, and I didn't have the right ideas about it and everything, because that was some time ago.
And Bill, you were involved with different initiatives in this regard. Share with our audience again, please, which they are.
Well, what the Life Extension Foundation is involved in is disseminating scientific information to the public so that they understand how they may reduce their risk of prematurely contracting an illness. And if they develop something like congestive heart failure or a malignancy, they should know there's a lot more out there than what the conventional medical people are offering. Doesn't mean they don't go to an oncologist, but there's a lot more they can do with existing therapies. Existing therapies their oncologists can prescribe if they merely ask, if they merely have the information. And anything that Life Extension recommends, what we tell people to do is verify it. If we tell you to take, let's say, metformin and aspirin if you already have cancer because it's going to improve your odds of surviving, you don't have to believe us. Type it into PubMed, that's the National Library of Medicine's database that our federal government maintains for us. It's right there on your computer. Metformin and cancer, read a couple hundred studies, and if you have cancer, you're going to ask your doctor to prescribe metformin.
Why is this information not made publicly known by the medical establishment?
Well, you look at metformin and aspirin and a drug called cimetidine, that's a generic word for Tagamet. The drugs are out there. It's illegal, though, for the manufacturers to tell the public that they have anti-cancer properties. The fact of the matter is they do, and that's validated in hundreds of published studies. So if you're a victim of cancer and you don't know to ask for those medications, your oncologist has not been educated about them. He's been educated about chemo and radiation, which for some people is necessary, but using metformin, aspirin, cimetidine, a number of other existing medications can add a lot of years to a cancer patient's longevity. In some cases, improve their odds of having a complete response to the disease.
Most interesting, Bill. Charlie, you've been involved with the production of movies and videos, and you've written and composed. What are your thoughts with regard to why the establishment doesn't make such crucial information more readily known to the public?
Well, it's a tough question. I think, it's in part it's just because ideas still take time for it to kind of get into the mainstream. Although that's happening exponentially too. That's happening faster and faster. And you can just tell because you see ideas and things happening faster. The idea that television took 50 years or something to get around, but cell phones took a lot faster to become ubiquitous. So and those are just technologies, but that's kind of happening with ideas. So it's still taking time, but kind of getting it more and more in the mainstream, but it's going to take some time for the older generation. I think it's a lot faster for the younger people.
Speaking of progress, Bill, what's new, what's happening right now that we should be made aware of?
At this stage, there's probably about 6 different experiments that are either being conducted right now or will soon be initiated that aim to reverse biological aging in humans. We're no longer focused on animal studies. It's already been done in animals. We've already made old animals grow biologically younger. Human studies are going on right now aimed at making older people behave functionally as younger individuals. That is the most exciting news, because if we can take older people and reverse their aging process, they're going to be alive in 2045 when we're going to enjoy the singularity.
Looking back at the history of Life Extension Foundation and all of the milestones you've witnessed in these decades of work, what stands out in your memory as among the most important things in the history of life extension and your research?
Well, back in 1983, we recommended low-dose aspirin as a way of reducing heart attack risk. The newer information shows that low-dose aspirin reduces cancer risk. And if you have cancer, aspirin will reduce metastatic risk. So by taking aspirin, which helps the platelets that get sticky in people, especially if they're laying around in a bed, the platelet stickiness facilitates tumor cell metastases. By taking low-dose aspirin, you unstick those platelets so that the metastatic cancer cells don't glue themselves on. So it's a really simple approach. And again, type in aspirin and cancer treatment into PubMed and read the published literature. It's right there before our eyes, but people have to know to ask for it.
What are your plans for the future with life extension at this time in history?
The priority of life extension is to induce meaningful and systemic reversal of pathological aging processes in elderly humans. Our focus right now is initiating and helping to facilitate existing studies where older humans are experimenting with therapies that may reverse their aging process, and the preliminary evidence is powerful.
As I said, really, truly fascinating. And Bill, before we conclude, what would you like to share with our audience with regard to what is currently on your mind at this time?
Well, the fact of the matter is, most people today die prematurely. We've been called sometimes to a situation where a person's in a hospital and told they have a day or two to live. And we have a cryopreservation team there ready to initiate that process. And we start looking through their medical records and we realize they're not really dying. It's just an oversight by their medical doctor. And so often, if the family is proactive and they look into what is causing that person to die, they can get that person out of the hospital. I'll never forget a situation where we were called to do a cryopreservation and we saw that the person was dying of anemia. We simply said to the attending doctor, why don't you go do a blood transfusion? That patient lasted 11 years longer. They were supposed to be dead, but just low red blood cell counts, low hemoglobin, something that simple was overlooked by the doctor. And here we're out there to do a cryopreservation, and we have to tell the doctor, why don't you just get that person some blood, and that individual lived 11 years longer, and then we cryopreserved him.
So many stories of this nature, and people bearing their mistakes.
Exactly. People who could have lived going into the ground prematurely. It's happening for a lot of reasons. One, they don't know what medications that could be used to potentially cure their disease or delay their death.
Bill, as always is the case, and Charlie, this has been most fascinating. Thank you so very much.
You're welcome.
This brings us to the end of our show today. I'm Richard Peritz. Thank you for being with us.
The preceding program was sponsored by RCP Productions Incorporated and Friends of the Shalom Show.